everyone, this is Lisa with the Crochet Garden, and I'm going to show you how to make the Waffle Ripple Addict Afghan today. So I'm going to be making the smallest size. You're going to need your yarn needle and your scissors, your worsted weight yarn, and of course a tape measure. And the smallest size is the one that is listed first, and that's the one outside the parentheses. So let's see here. We need to chain 78. So go ahead and do that with your hook, whatever size you need it to get gauge. Okay, I went ahead and I made my chain. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a chain 2 loop in the second chain from hook. And to make a chain 2 loop, that is simply a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet. And we're going to make that all into the same stitch. So here's our second chain from hook. Go ahead and insert our hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, there's our single crochet, and then we're going to chain 2, and then we're going to go into that same chain and single crochet. And that is a chain 2 loop. Okay, so then we're going to skip our next chain, and then we're going to do a double crochet 2 together. So skip our next chain, and to do a double crochet 2 together, we're essentially taking 2 stitches and turning it into 1. We're going to yarn over just like we normally would for a double crochet. Remember to skip that stitch, and we're going to pull up a loop. And then we're going to yarn over and take off 2. So it's kind of like we're doing a double crochet halfway. Then we're going to yarn over, and we're going to go into our next chain and pull up a loop, and then we're going to yarn over and take off 2 loops on hook. So now we have 3 loops on hook. I'm going to yarn over and take off all 3, and that is a double crochet 2 together. You can kind of see how it took these 2 chains and turned it into 1 stitch. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and double crochet in each of the next 7 chains. So go ahead and do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And here's what it looks like so far. Got our 7 double crochet. Now next we're going to make 3 double crochets in our next chain. So 1, 2, because remember we're going all into the same chain, and 3. See, we're starting to make our first arch. Okay, then we're going to go ahead and double crochet in our next 7 chain. So we're going to be coming back down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So you can see this is the start of our first arch. All right, so next we're going to do, now before we did a double crochet 2 together, so now we're going to make a double crochet 3 together. Okay, to make a double crochet 3 together, it's the same technique as before. So we're going to yarn over, insert our hook in our next chain, and pull up a loop, and then take off 2. And we're going to do that 2 more times, 1 in each of the next 2 chains. So yarn over, pull up a loop, and then take off 2. So we have 2 that are done halfway. And then we're going to yarn over, insert our hook, and take off 2. Then we're going to yarn over, and we're going to take off all 4 loops on hook. And now we've essentially turned 3 chains, 3 stitches into 1. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to double crochet in the next 7 chains, and we're going to repeat this increase, double crochet 7, and then the decrease, double crochet 7 all the way across. So 1, 2, and 7. Okay, so our last was a decrease. So now we're going to do an increase because we're at the top of that arch. So we're going to go ahead and do 1, 2, and 3. Okay, now we're going to double crochet in our next 7. 1. Okay, so since our last one was an increase, now we're going to do the decrease, and that's the double crochet 3 together. So yarn over, insert your hook and pull up a loop, yarn over and take off 2, and do that same again in each of the next 2 chains. Pull up a loop, take off 2, yarn over, pull up a loop, and take off 2. See that? We have 3 of them picked up. We're going to yarn over and take off all 4 loops on hook. And we're just going to continue doing that all the way across to the end. 1. Okay, so we've gotten this all the way down to the end to the last 4 chains. And next, and you see our last was an increase, so now we're going to work a decrease here at the end. So we're going to go ahead and double crochet 2 together, just like we did at the start. So insert our hook and take off 2, yarn over, insert our hook and take off 2. So we're just doing 2, and again yarn over and take off all 3 loops on hook, and then we're going to skip the next chain and we're going to work a chain 2 loop in our last chain. So go ahead and do a single crochet, chain 2, and then a single crochet. And that is the first row. I'm going to go ahead and chain 1 and turn. Now to start and end every row, we're always going to start with a chain 2 loop and end with a chain 2 loop. And to work into a chain 2 loop, it's very simple. You just work into that chain 2 space that you made. So go ahead and insert your hook. We're going to do a single crochet, chain 2, and a single crochet, all in that same space. And we're going to do that at the beginning and the end for every row from here on. Makes it easier when you're working the edging to work into. Okay, so now we're on row 2. We did our chain 2 loop, and we're going to skip our next double crochet 2 together. So you can see where it's at. You can follow your top 2 braids. We're going to skip this stitch. And we're going to go ahead and front post double crochet around the next double crochet, which is right here. Now to work a front post double crochet, you're going to yarn over, and you're going to insert your hook from front to back to front again. And then you're going to pull up a loop. See, we're going around the post. We're not going into the top 2 loops. We're going around the post. Going to yarn over, take off 2, and then yarn over and take off 2. And that is our front post. Okay, next we're going to work a double crochet in our next double crochet. So now we're going to work this a total of 4 times. We just did 1 time, so we're going to repeat that 3 more times. So yarn over, insert your hook front to back to front again, and pull up a loop, yarn over and take off 2, yarn over and take off 2. and then we're going to double crochet into our next double crochet, just like that. So that's 2 times we've done that repeat. So we're going to do that one more time, and then a double crochet, and then one last time. We're going to front post, and then a double. And here is what this looks like so far. And you notice our next stitch is the center of that 3 double crochet group. Now we're going to do a waffle increase. So a waffle increase, you can see that the waffle is starting to form. This is the base, the first start of it. So to work a waffle increase, we're going to work 3 stitches around one, this center one. And to do that, we're going to work a front post double crochet, then a double crochet, and then a front post double crochet, all in this same stitch. So go ahead and yarn over and insert your hook from front to front again, and pull up a loop. Yarn over and take off 2, yarn over and take off 2. So that's our first front post. Now we need to work a double crochet in that same stitch. So here's the post of the stitch we just worked around, and here is the top of the stitch, the top 2 braids, and that is where we're going to work our double crochet into. So go ahead and yarn over, and you might have to pull this post stitch that you just did back down a little bit. Insert your hook and pull up a loop, yarn over and take off 2, then yarn over and take off 2. See, and that's your double crochet. Now we're going to make a front post double crochet around that same stitch. So yarn over, and all you need to do is insert your hook right below the previous one. Insert your hook around that post again from front to front again. Yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over, take off 2, and take off 2. And that is our waffle increase. And you can see it kind of makes a V. And that's going to be the technique we use to make these increases throughout the entire Afghan. So make sure yours looks like that. All right, so now we're going to go and work our way down. We go ahead and double crochet into our next double crochet. And then we're going to front post on our next double crochet. See, we're just starting that same stitch pattern on our way down to the decrease. And we're going to do this 3 times. So we've done it once. Go ahead. Whoops, I'm sorry. We do our double crochet, and then we're going to do our front post and double 3 times. So that's 1 time. So front post, double, and that's 2 times. We're going to do that one more time. Front post, and then double. Okay, so now here's what we're looking like. If you notice, we're now at the decrease section. Here is our first, a double crochet 3 together, and we're going to be doing something similar, only now we're going to be doing it with a waffle stitch decrease. So here's our 3, which turned into 1 stitch. So this is the center. So we have 1, 2, 3. And our waffle decrease is always going to work over 3 stitches. So it'll have the center decrease plus the 2 on the side. So to do that, we're essentially going to turn those 3 stitches into 1. And it's basically a front post 2 together. So go ahead and yarn over, And what we're going to do is we're going to insert our hook from front to back to front again around that first stitch. Okay, we're going to skip this double crochet 3 together. We're just going to let it be. We're not really skipping it. It's just staying there. And then we're going to insert our hook from front to back to front again around the next double crochet. So we're going to kind of cinch those 2 together to decrease them. We're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. See that? Kind of got those 2 together. And then we're going to yarn over, take off 2, yarn over, and take off 2. And there we go. We just turned these 2 stitches into 1 in the waffle form. So now we're going to go ahead and double crochet into our next double crochet. Now we're going to do a front post and double 3 times, just like we did coming down. So front post, and then double. That's 1, front post, and then a double. That's 2, front post, and then a double. And that's 3 times. So here is what that's looking like. And you notice once we did that 3 times repeat, look where we're at. We're at the center stitch of the 3 double crochet group. So now we're going to do that waffle increase again, just like we did at the beginning of the row. So we're going to work a front post double crochet, a double crochet, and a front post double crochet around that center stitch. So go ahead and yarn over, insert your hook from front to back to front again and pull up a loop, yarn over and take off 2, yarn over and take off 2. That's our first front post. Now you remember, you just need to peek behind to find the top of that stitch that we just worked around. Here's the top of it. And we're going to work a double crochet into the top of that double crochet, just like that. Remember, we're doing a waffle increase, and then we're going to work a front post around the same post. And to do that, we yarn over, just kind of insert our hook at the bottom around that post, and pull up a loop, yarn over and take off 2, yarn over and take off 2. And we're going to repeat this all the way across. So we're going to double crochet in our next double crochet, and then we're going to front post double 3 times. So front post, and then double, front post, and then double. We're going to do that one more time. Front post, and then double. Now we're at our decrease, and you see there's 3 stitches. 1, 2, this was our foundation row decrease, and 3. So do that. To do that, yarn over, insert your hook from front to back to front again around that first one. We're going to let the center one just be there at the bottom, and insert our hook from front to back to front again around the next one. Yarn over and pull up a loop. Then we're going to yarn over, take off 2, and then take off 2. See that? That decreased those 3 down into 1 stitch. So we're going to go ahead and do the same thing. We're going to double crochet in our next stitch, and then we're going to work our front post double 3 times. So front post, double, front post, double, and then front post and double. And you should be, see at the center, at the next increase. This is going to be the center stitch of the 3DC group that we made. So to do that increase, we're going to work our front post, and then we're going to work a double crochet on top of that same stitch that we just worked around. So double, and then we're going to work a front post around that same double, just like that. And we're going to do that all the way across. Okay, so you should have worked that all the way to the end to your last 2 double crochet. And here's what the end looks like. So to finish, we're going to front post double crochet around the next double crochet and skip the last double crochet 2 together. So we're going to end with a front post, and then we're going to skip that double crochet together. It's going to kind of work as a little mini half decrease. And then we're going to chain 2 loop in our last chain 2 loop space. And to do that, insert your hook into the chain 2 space. We're going to work a single crochet, chain 2, and a single crochet. Now, if you're switching colors every 2 rows, don't take off the last 2 loops of that last single crochet. We're going to go ahead and change colors. So to do that, before you pull through that last strand to finish your double crochet, you're going to go ahead and get your new yarn, your new color, which I have right here, and we're going to pull that through to finish our single crochet. So this way, the new starting row is starting with the correct color, and your last row ends fully in the previous color. So go ahead and chain 1 and turn. Now you can crochet over these tails if you want, or you can leave them at the side at the end and crochet over them when you're working the edging. But for right now, you do want to cut off, or you can even carry it up, depending on if you're just doing like 2 or 3 stripes. It's not much to just carry up the yarn on the side. You don't have to snip it. But since I'm going to do like many colors, I'm going to go ahead and snip this for now. Okay, so we're going to start off with, this is row 3. We're going to start off with a chain 2 loop, just like before. Insert our hook, and I'm definitely going to probably crochet over that tail. Start with a single crochet, chain 2, and a single crochet, all in that chain 2 space, just like so. All right, so now you can see our waffle stitch is starting to form. And it's going to take a few rows to start to really see the stitch pattern, but it's going to be coming real soon. Okay, so once you have your new color on your hook, and you go ahead and chain 1 and turn. And I want to show you something. Our last stitch was a front post double crochet, and the stitch before that was a double crochet. So just keep your eye on this one. This is a front post double crochet, and we're going to go ahead and turn our last stitch. Now from this side, it looks like a double crochet, but it's not. It's really a front post double crochet. See that? And then our double crochet, which is right here, looks like a front post, but it's not. It's a double crochet. So just be mindful when you're working into stitches that you're working around the correct one, because some people might have thought, oh, okay, so I work into the next front post and they think that this is a front post, but you know, it's not. This is a double crochet. But an easy way when you're working the waffle stitch pattern is, I consider these raised stitches. Even though they're double crochet, I look at them as raised stitches. And then I look at these as recessed stitches. And you're always going to work a front post around a raised stitch, and you're always going to work a double crochet around a recessed stitch. So just kind of think about it that way to make sure that your waffle stitch pattern comes out and you're stitches, the stitch count all comes out correct. So what we're going to do is on row 3, I'm going to go ahead and chain 2 loop into the first chain 2 loop, which is a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, and then we're going to skip this first stitch. And the reason for that is that's going to be our little mini decrease, our like little half decrease at the end here. And then what we're going to do is front post, double. We're going to do that 4 times. And this is a raised stitch. So we're going to work our front post. And then we're going to work a double. That's 1 repeat. Front post. And then double. And that's 2 repeats. Front post. And then double. And that's 3. Front post. Double. And that's 4 repeats. Now notice, and this is what it's going to look like from here on out when you're doing your increases on both sides. From here on, you're going to have your center stitch, which is right here, and that's what we're going to work at the top of the arch, and that's what we're going to work our waffle increase around. So remember, a waffle increase is a front post double crochet, a double crochet, and a front post double crochet all around the same stitch. And it's always going to be a raised stitch. If you don't have a raised stitch in the center, then that means something is off. So let's go ahead and work our front post. And then we're going to work a double crochet into the top of that same double. So you might have to just move that stitch you just made to the side to get in there. And then we're going to work a front post around the post of the same stitch as the other one. Yarn over, take off 2, take off 2. And here is what our increase looks like. All right, so now we're going to get into our stitch pattern. We're going to double crochet into the next stitch, and you see how that's recessed. So double, and then we're going to do our front post double 3 times. On the ends, there's always a repeat of 4, and then in the body, it's always a repeat of 3. So we could do our front post and our double. That's 1. Front post, and then double. And that's 2. Front post, and then double. And that's 3. Now we're at our decrease. And this is also what the decreases are going to look like. And you're going to see 2 raised stitches with a recess between. And this, if your decrease, when you come up on it, doesn't look like that, you'll want to go back and make sure to see maybe what's amiss. And we're going to do the decrease the same way. We're going to do a front post of these 2 stitches together. So yarn over, and this is the waffle decrease. So yarn over, insert your hook from front to back to front again around the first raised stitch and the second raised stitch. We're going to leave that recessed one right down there below. Yarn over and pull up a loop. And then we're going to yarn over and take off 2. And then take off 2. And you see that? So instead of a V with the increases, now we kind of have an upside down V right there. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and double crochet in our next stitch. And then we're going to do a front post double 3 times. And we're going to repeat this all the way across. So front post, double, it's 1. Front post, double, that's 2. Front post, double, and that's 3. Now here we are, the top of the arch, and it is a raised stitch, so we know we're right on track. And we're going to do a front post, double, and front post around that same stitch. So we're going to front post, and then we're going to double. Remember, we might have to just kind of pull, look back a little, peek over. So we're going to the top of that same stitch, double, yarn over, and a front post around that same exact stitch. And here's what this looks like so far. All right, we're going to put in a double in our next stitch, and then we're going to do our front post double 3 times all the way down to the next decrease. So 1, and 2, and then 3. And here we are at the next decrease. So yarn over, insert our hook around the next 2 raised stitches, and pull up a loop, take off 2, and take off 2. And just continue that to the end. Okay, so I finished that repeat all the way to the end, to the last front post and double. So you should have these 2 stitches left plus your chain 2 loop. So what we're going to do is we're going to front post around the next stitch, and then we're going to skip the last stitch. So front post around this stitch. And remember, we're always going to skip the first and last stitch. That acts as a little mini decrease there. So we're going to skip that one, and we're going to go into a chain 2 loop. 1, 2. And that's row 3. Okay, go ahead and chain 1 and turn. And you can see that the waffle stitch appears on both sides. It's one thing I loved about designing this. Now to start off, we start off with a chain 2 loop in our first chain 2 loop. And remember, we skip the first stitch just like we skipped the last stitch. And we're going to go ahead and front post double 4 times. Remember, at the beginning, it's always 4 times. 1, 1 repeat, 2 repeats, 3 repeats, and that's 4. And here we are. And if you notice this double crochet here, or I'm sorry, not double crochet. Well, yeah, double crochet, but, and if you notice, when you end that repeat, this next stitch to be increased in is right above is directly in the center of the V of the previous increase. See that? And that is a key to know that you're always on track with your increases. So to do the increase, we're going to front post and then double on top of that same stitch. And then we're going to front post around that same stitch. See that? And your V's, your increased V's will always be on top of one another. Okay, go ahead and double crochet into the next stitch, and then we're going to do our front post double 3 times. So front post, double, that's 1, front post, double, that's 2, front post, double, and that's 3. So now we're at our decrease. You see how there's an upside down V? So go ahead and yarn over, insert your hook around the first raised stitch and the second raised stitch, and we're going to pull up a loop, and then we're going to take off 2 and take off 2. So you see these upside down V's? These also will always be on top of one another, and that's another key to make sure that you're doing that correctly. So we're going to go ahead and double crochet in our next stitch, and then we're going to do our front post double 3 times. So front post and then double. That's 1. This is 2, 2, and then 3, 3. Oh, and then we're going, I'm getting ahead of myself. And then we're going to be at our increase stitch. Can you see how it's at the center of this previous V? So we're going to front post and then double on top of the same stitch, and then front post around that same stitch. And here's what it looks like so far. And you're just going to go ahead and repeat that all the way across. Okay, so now we're at the end of the row, and we're going to end with a front post. Just like we always start with the front post, we're going to end with a front post. Skip the last stitch. We always skip the first stitch and the last stitch. That's kind of like our half decrease at the end. So then we're going to end with a chain 2 loop. Now we have 2 rows of pink here, and we have 2 rows of orange. I'm changing colors every 2 rows, so this is going to be a color change row. So before I finalize my chain 2 loop, I'm going to insert my hook in, pull up a loop, and I'm going to draw my new color through instead of the old, just like before. And then what I'm going to do, because I like to secure mine, I'm going to go ahead and tie that tail just like so, and then I'm going to chain 1 and turn, and it's the same row, the same repeat all the way throughout the entire rest of the Afghan. So I'm going to start with a chain 2 loop, and I'm going to skip that first stitch and go into a front post, because we always end each row with we start each row with a front post and we end each row with a front post. And we're just gonna go ahead and do we're gonna double crochet around each recessed stitch, and we're gonna front post around each raised stitch. And that's an easy way to kind of remember, instead of getting confused and worrying which one is a front post and which one is a double, at least when you're first starting. And here we are at the increase. So we're going to front post, then double around the same stitch, and then front post around the same stitch. So again, you can see here's our first increase, here's our second increase, and here is our third increase. They're always going to align vertically. So we're going to do that all the way across, and just repeat our increases and our decreases. Now I love this pattern stitch. You know, I was the one who actually came up with this stitch pattern many years ago, and I had put, whoops, I was going to pass up my decrease. So remember, the decreases, they all align. So I'm not even counting anymore, and you'll eventually get to that point. So to make that decrease, insert underneath the first post and the second post, leave that one behind, and front post those 2 together. And there's our decrease. And then we're going to double and front post all the way until our next increase. So anyways, yeah, I came up with this stitch, and at the time I was doing a book for Annie's Attic, and I almost put this, an Afghan, I was doing a book of Afghans, and I almost put this stitch pattern in, but I decided to hold off. I had quite a few stitch patterns and I had to pick and choose. So this one I just held aside, and I designed a hat pattern and I put it up on Ravelry, and I called for testers, and oh my goodness, I had so many people wanting to test it. I think it was because it was a new stitch. And at that time, I wasn't really active on YouTube or anything, so I really should have been, because... But anyways, I kept on getting all these messages of people saying, when is this stitch going to be released? When is this stitch going to be released? And lo and behold, it just ended. It spread like wildfire everywhere. Now when I go on, there's so many patterns designed with this stitch, and I love that. I just love the crochet world. I just love coming up with stitches. I love coming up with combinations. It's just, even as a kid, I would always come up with like ideas for things and just love to invent things. And anyways, what I really love about this stitch pattern is how plush it is. It's so soft. It's so plush. And I had even one tester whose child has sensory issues, has autism. And she said he loves it. He loves the Afghan. So she thought that it was really nice that she was able to find a stitch pattern that that he was able to not have issues with. And I'm not saying all kids won't have issues, because every child is different, but I thought that that was pretty darn cool. So just go ahead and do this all the way across. Here we are at our increase. So hopefully soon you can just make this in front of the TV or whatever, and just, you know, just keep in mind, just be mindful of your increases, your decreases, but you'll eventually see if you miss one. And you remember to skip the first stitch and the last stitch, you know, right after the chain 2 loop and right before the chain 2 loop. See, here we are, we skip our last stitch, and that's kind of like a half decrease, because we're ending each side at the bottom. See, we're ending on a decrease. So that's why we skip that last stitch. It's kind of like works as like a half decrease, because we're not making a full arch going up. So this is the first row of 2 colors, so we're not doing a color change. Go ahead and chain 1 and turn like that. Look at that. So pretty, all the color combinations and gradients you can do. It's going to look amazing. And just repeat that all the way across. Here we did our first chain 2 loop, and skip our first stitch and go right into a front post. All right, I'll see you tomorrow once I have this piece done. I hope you guys love making this. Okay, so now we're ready for the edging. So what you want is your last row facing, and this is the last row, and you can tell because this is where you can see the top braids. See, if you look around from the opposite side, you don't see them. So go ahead and attach your yarn, whatever edging color, with a slip stitch to the first chain 2 loop. And chain 1, and we're going to work a triple chain 2 loop in that same space. So that is a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, chain 2, and a single crochet. And if you look, you end up with 3 chain 2 spaces. All right, so following our instructions. Oh, and then we want to also place a stitch marker in the first one. So I'm going to go ahead and just put in a scrap piece of yarn as my stitch marker, just like that. Then we're going to go ahead and continue on. All right, so we're going to skip the next front post double crochet, and we're going to work a double chain 2 loop in the next double crochet. So we're going to skip this one and work a double in this next one. So single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, chain 2, and single crochet. So now we're at the repeat section where the asterisk is, and we're going to go ahead and chain 2 loop in the next double crochet, skip the next front post double crochet, and we're going to do that all the way across. So we're going to go ahead and skip this front post, and we're going to work a chain 2 loop in the next double crochet. And a plain chain 2 loop is just one chain 2 space. So we had a triple, a double, and now we have a single, and we're going to have singles all the way across. So skip the next front post double crochet, and then we're going to work a chain 2 loop in the next double crochet. And we're just going to do that all the way across. Okay, so once you're at the end, you want to work a triple chain 2 loop in that last chain 2 loop corner. So we're going to go ahead and do that. 1, 2, 3, and you want to mark the first chain 2 loop of that triple. So I'm going to go ahead and use a lilac stitch marker this time. So once you've got that stitch marker marked, you want to count the number of chain 2 loops that you have between your corner triples. So we're not going to count our corner triple, so we're just going to put that aside, and we're going to start counting after that and then before our last corner triple. So go ahead and count, and you should end up with an odd number. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 36, 37. And remember, we're not counting that corner triple. Now write that number down, because that's the number of chain 2 loops we're going to need for the bottom. So this is the top of the Afghan, and we're going to need that same number for the bottom. Okay, so what you want to do now is just rotate your work, keep the same side facing to work down the next side of the Afghan. So we're on the second side now. And what we're going to do is we're going to work a chain 2 loop into each row edge. And you want to end up with an odd number, so between the triple chain 2 loop corners. So I'm going to go ahead and work to my first row edge, a chain 2 loop, just like that. And if you have any yarn tails on this side to crochet over, go ahead. This is the best way to hide them. Now you see here, this is our next row edge, and you can see because the corner chain 2 loops make a little space, you can just work right into the space as such. So just keep an eye, go ahead and count, or you can count at the end. Crochet over my tails. 2, 3, and go ahead and work that all the way down. All right, so once you've worked all the way down through the last, almost to the last row edge, I'm leaving the last row edge for our corner. You want to count to make sure, again, that you have an odd number of chain 2 loops. Now I came up with 32. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead, this last one that I made, I'm just going to go ahead and turn that into a double. So I'm just going to chain 2 loop, and that's going to give me an odd number of chain 2 loops between the corners. And don't worry if your edge is kind of has a few little ripples here and there. That's okay. That's going to even out. And in fact, that's kind of intended. So go ahead and make our corner triple chain 2 loops. So 1, 2, 3. Now that number that you wrote down on the top for the number of chain 2 loops between the corners, you want to go ahead and work them evenly across. So what I like to do is I kind of like to look where the halfway is and then take that number, make it in half, and work that number halfway across. That way it kind of turns up evenly. Now another thing you can do is, remember on the other side is we worked a chain 2 loop in every double crochet and we skipped every front post. So you can kind of use these stitches as a guide where to make your chain 2 loops. And then just adjust at the end if you need to add one more, just turn one into a double at the end. It's not highly critical, but I would use these post stitches as sort of a guide. And go ahead and work that same number all the way across. And when you're working into the stitching, don't work into these free loops. I mean, you can, but I've been designing for so many years, and what can happen is over the time when you have a baby or a kid, even a big adult, these free loops, they're not very strong. They sort of stretch over time, and you'll start to see holes to where the edging is connected. So and I didn't realize that, you know, when I first began designing, but seeing that happen over the years, I have so many little things of tips and tricks, you know, just from designing for so long, and this is just one of them. So what I like to do is I like to work into the stitching itself over a good amount, and it's not critical how far you go down, but you don't want to go down really far, but just into the stitching so you're getting more than the free loop. So go ahead and work that same number of chain 2 loops across until you get to the next corner. And when you get to the corner, go ahead and work your triple chain 2 loop. All right, so I have worked my 37 chain 2 loops all the way across, and I kind of use the double crochets as a guide of the first row. I'm going to go ahead and work my triple chain 2 loop in the corner. So 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to go ahead and mark the first chain 2 loop of that triple, and this time we're going with a kind of like a green blue. So go ahead and get that marked. Then we're going to go ahead and rotate to work along the last side, long edge of the Afghan. So on this last side, you want to make the same number of chain 2 loops as you made on the other side, and that would be on this other long side. So if you can't remember or you forgot to write it down, go ahead and just count between the number of chain 2 loops between the corner chain 2 loops, and then work evenly in each row edge as best as you can, that same number all the way to the corner, and then go ahead and join. Okay, so we are ready for round 2 of the edging, and you should have your chain 2 loops done all the way around the Afghan. And again, if it ripples a little bit in certain parts, that's okay, because the next round is going to kind of cinch that up. So don't worry about that. Now we're going to work our bobble, and to work our bobble, we're going to be working into the chain 2 loops. And to work into the chain 2 loop, you don't want to work into the single crochets. You want to work by inserting your hook into that chain 2 space of each chain 2 loop. So go ahead and yarn over and insert your hook into the chain 2 space and pull up a loop, and then yarn over and take off 2 loops. So now you have 2 loops on the hook. We're going to do that 4 more times in that same chain 2 loop space. So 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now we have 6 loops on the hook, and we're going to yarn over and take off all those loops. Now I know a lot of times in patterns you can chain 1 to close. I don't in this one, but you are more than welcome to. It's not going to really change the aesthetic, you know, or the functionality. I just prefer not to, because I feel like it lengthens the bobble just a bit, just to give a little more filling. The bobble's not going to be as defined. It will be more defined if you chain 1. And again, you can do it, and you can kind of see the difference if you want to, and see what you prefer. But for right now, I'm just going to go directly into a single crochet. and that's what that looks like on the other side. So it just kind of lengthens it a little bit, so there's a little more filling per se. I hope that makes sense. So we're going to go ahead and do that again, and we're going to repeat this all the way across. We're going to do a bobble and then a single crochet, bobble and a single crochet. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we have 6 loops on hook. Going to yarn over and take off, and then go directly into a single crochet. And here's what the first 2 look like. And go ahead and finish that all the way across, and I'll meet you back. Okay, so I have worked all the way across this first side, and I want to show you something. Here's what we're looking like so far. Now when you get to the corner, this is something to check to make sure. Here's my corner triple chain 2 loop. Here's the center one. Here's the first one, here's the center one, and here's the third one. And next, my next stitch, because I just worked a single crochet, is going to be a bobble. So you always want to make sure that your bobble is in the center corner of that triple chain 2 loop. And if not, you may have accidentally made like an even number of chain 2 loops, or you may have missed one. So just go ahead and check and go through, because you always want a bobble in that corner stitch. So go ahead and work that for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, take off. Then we're going to go ahead and single crochet into that next one. Now we went ahead and made a single crochet in that one. We want to take our stitch marker, okay, and we're going to move it up into that single crochet that we just made. One of these days I'll invest in proper stitch markers. There we go. So that single crochet is now marked. And then I'm going to continue working bobble, single crochet, bobble, single crochet all the way around. And just make sure that you have a bobble in every corner chain 2 loop space, and move your stitch markers up. Okay, I will see you back when I'm done. So here I am at the end, and I'm about to work the last corner triple chain 2 loop before the first bobble that I made at the beginning of the round. So I'm going to go ahead and single crochet, work my bobble, see how that's in the corner chain 2 space. 2, 3, 4, 5, and my single crochet, my last stitch, which is the single crochet, should be made in your last marked stitch. And again, we're going to go ahead and move that stitch marker up. I'm going to join in my bobble first. I can sometimes find that working the next stitch before moving the stitch marker up gives a little bit of sturdiness when I'm remarking a stitch. And I'm going to go ahead and chain 1 and turn and take a look, see what that looks like. And here you can see here's the, let's see, is this the top or the bottom? This is the top edge. And these bobbles, as you progress in rounds, will start to even out. Right now they're still kind of taking the shape of the ripple. And remember that little bit of rippling we had on the sides? You see how this next round kind of cinched that up? So having that little bit of rippling on that first round is totally fine and totally intended. Okay, so here we are. Now we're going to work into that first single crochet, and we are going to work a quin chain 2 loop. Do you remember that from your 6th grade, or is it 2nd grade? No, it wouldn't be 2nd grade. Do you remember that from math class? Quin, quad. So that is going to be 5 chain 2 spaces. So just like we did the corner triple chain 2 loops, now we're going to do a quin. So single crochet, and we can remove our marker for right now. Chain 2, so that's 1, chain 2, single, that's 2. Okay, so my battery died and then it started to rain and it was super, super dark. So here I am, and I went and finished that round. But anyways, a quin chain 2 loop is 5 chain 2 loops. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And you want to mark this center one. And then you're going to go ahead and chain 2 loop in each bobble and single crochet all the way around until the next corner. And when you get to the next corner, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to do a quin chain 2 loop, which is 5 chain 2 spaces. And go ahead and mark your center one and do that all the way around. Okay, once you have that done and you join the end of the round, we're going to go ahead and chain 1 and turn. And we're going to work a single crochet into our first chain 2 loop. And then we're going to work a bobble into our next chain 2 loop. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then single crochet into our next chain 2 loop. And you're going to go ahead and do that all the way around. There's no increasing or anything, just work around your corners. And then when you work around the corners, go ahead and move your stitch marker up for the bigger sizes. Now for the size that I'm doing, the smallest size, I am just going to remove the markers. I'm not going to move them up because this is my last round. Now I'll show you, let me finish this one, and I'll show you what it looks like on the underside, or the right side, rather. Okay, let's turn that around. And here you can see the bobbles are nestled between the previous round. And you can continue this. You can do as many round of bobbles as you want. Just continue working in the corner. And if you start to find, if you're doing a massive round of bobbles, if you find that the quin is too much, you can work 3, but you want to work an odd number in the corner. So 3, 5, 7 if you can fit it in and it won't ripple, but 3 or 5 should be fine. But because if you find that every round that you're doing, if you're doing more than the pattern calls for, and you find that it's starting to ripple, or it seems like too many stitches, just do 3 on one of the rounds, and it's still gonna come out the same.